And of course, the other breaking news which ties in with all of this. Well, the question we're asking is, has the world of science lost the plot? 0344 499 1000. And in the last hour, Wales's First Minister has announced a 17-day lockdown across Wales from Friday evening.
A short, sharp shock to turn back the clock, slow down the virus and give us more time. We met again this morning and we have now reached the difficult decision to introduce a 2-week firebreak starting at 6 p.m. on Friday this week.
That's Mark Drakeford, who said that people will be told to stay at home while pubs, restaurants, non-essential shops will be forced to shut. Gathering indoors and outdoors with people not in a single household will be banned as part of the Firebreak. There's that word again. Let's speak with Neil Hamilton, former UKIP interim leader and Welsh Assembly member for Mid-West Wales. Neil Hamilton, afternoon to you. I mean, first, is it a firebreak, a circuit break, a handbrake? What is it?
Well, of course, it's not a firebreak. It'll just delay the transmission of the virus by a bit. Obviously, if people aren't in contact with other people, then it's more difficult for a virus to spread. But as soon as you lift the restrictions, then the infection rates will start to rise again. This is so patently obvious. Then, unless we're going to commit ourselves to permanent lockdown forevermore until either we're all dead or a virus is invented, then what's going to happen is that Britain will remain as a kind of open prison or series of gulags around the country with borders that we can't lawfully cross. And the economy is going to crash and millions of people are going to suffer, not just economically, but also in terms of their mental health and physical well-being as well. We know that there are masses and masses of other serious diseases and conditions which have gone untreated and undiagnosed as a result of the emphasis which the NHS has put on COVID. This is a zero-sum game. I mean, there is a real price, a real cost to the kind of policies which are being imposed upon us by governments that want to control us and everything around us.
What do you suppose is behind this then, Neil? I mean, Mark Drakeford's not a stupid person. Who's he listening to here? Maybe he is, by the way.
It's the same kind of people who are advising David Cameron, the so-called experts, but they're actually just professors of guesswork because they've no idea what the infection rates are amongst the population. The R rate is a meaningless statistic because we don't know what proportion of the population has a latent immunity. We don't even know how many people have already had the virus without even knowing it and are now immune. So I'm afraid that these draconian lockdowns are just like a giant pair of asbestos underpants to protect the backside of politicians.
Yeah, I wish I'd said that. That's a great way to describe it. Do you think there has been, Neil, an over-emphasis? I mean, we have to listen to scientists and clinicians, obviously, but has there been too much emphasis put on the science advice? Because as I begin to look at this story unfold, and I look at the way the science advice has changed very much. Don't wear a mask, do wear a mask. Lockdowns shouldn't happen too early, it should have happened earlier, etc. I look at that and I think, do these guys actually really know any more than the rest of us when it comes to coronavirus?
Well, they're not being guided by the science. I mean, who are the scientists who are saying this? It's certainly not Professor Suneptra Gupta, who is the leading epidemiologist at Oxford University, or Sir David Spiegelhalter, who is at Cambridge, or Professor Hugh Pennington, who's the Emeritus Professor of Epidemiology at Newcastle University, or any of those who signed the Great Barrington Declaration. Thousands of competent, real medical scientists. What the government is doing is listening not to scientists, but to mathematical modelers. And mathematical modelling is not science, it's guesswork. It's garbage in and garbage out. That's why when Professor Ferguson of Imperial College predicted in an early stage of this that there might be 500,000 deaths as a result, it gives you an idea of how preposterous some of these predictions are. I had a meeting with one of my health authorities that covers the whole of southwest Wales, Pembrokeshire, Carmarthenshire and Cardiganshire on Friday. And there are 3 people in hospital in Llanelli with COVID and 3 in Aberystwyth. And one of the 3 in Aberystwyth had been brought up from hospital in Swansea. This is an area which covers, I don't know, 500,000 people or something of that kind. and that's the real, not just the infection rate, that people are seriously ill.
It's now been locked down because
it doesn't really matter how many people are infected, so long as they don't experience any real adverse symptoms. Actually, what we want to do is encourage the disease to be transmitted amongst those who are not going to suffer any real ill effects. What we've done, or not what we've done, what our governments, with their all-knowing aspirations, have done, is to delay the onset of the latest transmissions of this disease into the autumn and the winter, when we're going to be least able to counteract them. You know, contrast that with Sweden, where the average death rate per day, without having had a statutory lockdown, has been between 1 and 2 deaths per day in the entire country for the last 2 months. And there is no uptick in Sweden in deaths. It was front-loaded. They suffered in the same way as we did at the start, but because they took a more mature approach to this, they're now reaping the benefits.
Where do you see this story going, Neil? I mean, we can, speculate about how bonkers some of the decisions are. I mean, Wales closing down. I mean, you just mentioned one region of your neck of the woods, probably covering 500,000 people, where there's, merely a few dozen in hospital. I mean, that just seems not just disproportionate, but utterly stupid. Do you think this pattern's going to continue? As you said at the beginning, the smart money would say that once this 17-day Welsh lockdown is over, the whole process starts again, unless somebody's going to miraculously cure it in the meantime.
Well, there is no greater stupidity than politicians who are determined to prove that they're right when all the evidence shows that they're wrong. And the lockdowns are, I think, a massive exercise in protecting or attempting to protect the reputations of those who've been responsible for catastrophically wrong policy decisions. We've lost 1/5 of our national income in the last 6 months. That means a massive hit to people's wealth and well-being. We know that the health service has been skewed in the direction of COVID at the expense of many other serious conditions, and there are many people who have died as a result who would otherwise not have died. None of that is ever put in the balance. I state the facts regularly in the Welsh Parliament. I quote the figures, and all I'm told is that I just want to condemn people to death. No, I don't condemn anybody to death, but as with other pandemics, we have to learn to adapt and to live with them, protect the vulnerable, whilst not restricting those who are not at risk. If you are under 65, there is a minute chance that you would suffer any ill effects from contracting COVID. 40% of the deaths have been people over 85, another 30% people over 75, and another 15% over 65, between 65 and 74. That's 85% of the deaths are those who are over 65, and almost all of them have got some other serious condition like diabetes or some other respiratory disorder. And it's because we don't actually devise a pandemic solution which factors in these obvious points. We create, a massive cost to the economy, which makes it more difficult for us to keep the population healthy in the widest sense. And we are creating massive problems of psychological nature with people who are not having the degree of human interaction and contact they need. And the mental health statistics will bear this out in due course.
Yeah, it's through the roof. Neil, thank you. Neil Hamilton, UKIP interim leader, Welsh Assembly member for Mid West Wales. I have to say, it's the first time I've spoken to Neil Hamilton for a long time. I'd forgotten UKIP still existed. I don't wish to be patronising to the democracy, but after what happened, of course, at the last EU elections, of course, well, we know what happened to them, which was pretty grim.